when I started to screen share. All right, so everybody, welcome to Amber Bartlett's talk um, on campaigns, quests, and coaching. How being a DM made her a leader. You can read Amber's bio there or look her up on LinkedIn and get more details. There are several of us here who have either worked with Amber or currently work with Amber like I do. Um, I didn't want to be too biased in my introduction, so I actually crowdsourced from the team and got these word clouds on words that they associate with first Amber as a person, and these are the words, and Amber as a leader, and you'll see that there's a lot of overlap on those, and Amber is one of, if not the best leaders I've worked with. So I've been very excited about this talk and very, very honored to be able to introduce her. And I'm going to turn the screen over to her now.
Well, I wasn't prepared to start this call by crying, so thanks for that surprise. Let me share my screen. Give me one moment. All right. Am I sharing the screen that I think that I want to be, Ray?
Awesome. Yes, you are.
All right. Well, hello. I'm Amber Bartlett. Thank you so much for taking some time to come have fun with me today as we talk about campaigns, quests, and coaching, how being a DM made me a leader. Now, for those of you that aren't quite as nerdy as I am, a DM is a dungeon master for a game called Dungeons and Dragons. DMs guide situations, they build the world, they create the hook, the bad guys and the adventurers. So I am super excited to share some of the things that I've learned from playing this amazing game. But before we get into that, who am I anyway? I've been a technologist for 12 years now. However, I spent the majority of that time and what feels like eons before it, honing my skills to be focused more on people than on the technology itself. I love building teams that don't just survive. They truly thrive and grow. And that's where my passion lies. I would also be super remiss if I didn't mention how much I truly love Dungeons and Dragons. It is my favorite game, and I play it anytime I get the opportunity to do so. I'll be honest, I like playing a character a lot more than I like being the dungeon master, but I've spent a ton of time doing both and have learned a lot along the way in both. So today I'm going to have you play a little D&D with me as we go through our talk today. It's going to be a great time. So you may be thinking, I've never played this game before. What are you even going to need from me? It's really easy. You're going to need one thing to have fun, and that's just dice. You're going to need a D20. If you are not in the know of us nerds that talk about get your D20s ready, it is a 20-sided die. Now, when you play D&D, you want to roll high. So anytime you roll, you're going to be hoping for big numbers. So let's imagine you roll a 1. That is an absolute critical fail, almost comedically bad fail. And if you roll a 20, the world is your oyster. You can practically do the impossible. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, you just said that I didn't need anything to have fun. I clearly don't have a D20. Don't even worry about it. All you need to do is Google roll dice, and you're going to get an image that looks a lot like this. It will have a 6-sided die already in the window. So what you'll need to do is just click that die and it'll go away. And then click this guy right here with the 20, and that will get you to this 20-sided die. It's going to work exactly like a real die does. It's just random numbers that are going to come up. So sometimes you'll roll great, sometimes you'll roll garbage, but that's just the way that this game goes. So anytime I say roll your dice, go ahead and just click this little button here. So I'm going to give everybody a minute to get situated, to grab your dice, to Google. But while I'm doing that, I just want to invite everyone to go ahead and feel comfortable taking yourself off mute. I am going to be asking some questions. I don't own all of the answers on leadership. It's not something that I have patented, and everyone has unique experiences that they can share as we're going along. In fact, if you guys don't talk, this whole call will probably last us 15 minutes. So encouraging everyone to speak up and participate. Really looking forward to hearing from you. All right. Hopefully everybody's good and settled, got your dice. We're ready to go. So let's go ahead and play with our imaginations. Anytime you see kind of a dorky screen like this come up, we're going to be playing with our imagination, and we're going to kind of go back and forth between imagination time and learning about leadership time. But what I would like you to do, if this is your first time playing D&D, maybe even just close your eyes, because we're going to get into this world for just a moment. I want you to imagine that you have traveled to a time when magic is absolutely real. And there are monsters in this world, and they are honestly everywhere. Everything feels different. The air feels different. It feels more clean and pure. You can hear a bird singing an evening song, but it is unlike any bird that you've ever heard in your life. Ahead of you is this building that you see pictured in front of you. It's so warm and has glowing lights coming from the windows. You can hear the sounds of people chatting over the sounds of someone playing a lute. You smell some warm meat pies, but definitely you smell ale. Gosh, words. You feel something heavy across your back. So you pat it and find out that you've got a weapon back there. Let's see what you've got. Everybody go ahead and roll your first D20 roll. All right. If you rolled a 1 through 5, I'm so sorry, but the only thing that you packed is a tree branch. Not everybody has the world's best weapon, just going to be honest with you. If you rolled a 6 through 10, you have a light crossbow back there. 11 through 15, pull it out. You've got this amazing, beautiful sword. 16 through 20, you have a massive battle axe. This is not your first time that you've been in a fight before, and you are prepared for anything that comes your way. Now that's fun, right? We like hearing someone describe things beautifully, and we like rolling our dice and figuring out what our own adventure is going to be. But we actually just did the first step in good leadership, which is having great communication. Using your words to paint a vivid image of exactly what you want your people to see is essential to being able to guide groups of knowledge workers. You should feel like you can almost touch the situation that is being described to you. When you play D&D, you're playing with the theater of the mind, and it's only fun if the dungeon master is willing to go above and beyond to take the time to really describe those scenarios that you're in. But why would I think that knowledge work is any different? Because our work lives in our minds. It's not something where you have a thing at the end all the time where you can just hold it and say, see, this is the thing that I did. Sometimes it's truly in the back end of something, and it's hard to see exactly what's been accomplished. So how do we guide that work is through crystal clear communication. And the key to clear communication is preparation. Being a leader requires being thoughtful. So prepare before you get ready to have a team meeting. You may be thinking, sure, I'm going to write down some broad bullet points. But what I would encourage you to do is take the time to think about what are the desired areas of impact that you want to have in this talk. Let's look at a master of painting a clear picture. It's Henry Ford, back from 1905. He said, "We will build a motor car for the great multitudes. It will be so low in price that no man making a good salary will be unable to own one and enjoy with his family the blessing of hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces. When we are through, everyone will be able to afford one. The horse will have disappeared from our highways and the automobile will be taken for granted." Isn't that an amazing vision that he is painting with his words? But there are some very clear areas of desired impact that he had. Y'all come off mute and tell me, what do you think? What do you see are some of these areas of impact?
Low cost and the way of the future.
Low cost for sure. Affordability, the way of the future. Horses are disappearing. Absolutely.
A way to bring families together.
Yes, yes. Encouraging that commitment of time.
Provide freedom.
Provide freedom. Ooh, I love that one. Absolutely. There's another one that is sort of implied that I will pull up here, which is mass production, which Jacob kind of alluded to when he said the way of the future. But without mass production, we're not going to have horses disappear, right? And we know that that's what Henry Ford ended up doing, which is amazing. But if he had not had these desired areas of impact, his message might have been much more muddy, and it wouldn't have given you that feeling of, man, I'd like to be a part of that. Even though I don't know anything about cars, I want to be a part of that because the vision is so clear. So when you're communicating with your team, take the time to prepare what takeaways or impacts you want to leave with the team. Now, sometimes this can be as abstract as an emotion. Maybe things at work have been really hairy lately, and it's going to be your job to sustain and motivate morale, right? Maybe that's what you're really looking for. So if that's the case, your area of impact is going to be more about an emotion than a to-do item. So I'm going to show you my technique for preparing. This is not the only right way, but it is the one that works best for me. I like a table. I like tables so much. You're going to see them throughout this presentation more than once. But it's really how I keep myself together. It's how I make sure that I've planned appropriately. So let me walk you through an example, and then we'll do one together. So my idea that I have to tell the team is there's going to be a new unpopular policy that's rolling out. And then I can tell you up front, my team's going to hate it. They were absolutely going to hate this policy. And I know that going into it. So when I'm sitting down to figure out how am I going to approach this, I need to think very carefully about what impact I need to have. So the first thing is I must have a behavior change. Even though we're going to hate this change, we still have to make it, right? So I need to be very clear about what that is. But I also need to have a morale check-in. I need to make sure that people are okay as we're talking through this new policy and giving them the opportunity to vent in our close little safe space, right? Because at the end of the day, people can disagree in our team room all they want to, but I need them to disagree and then commit. So turning around and following the change after they've had a chance to vent their displeasure. So then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write these bullet points of exactly what it is I want to cover. I'm not going to write a script. I want it to come from my heart as I'm speaking, but I do want to make sure that I don't leave something important out. So my bullet points for this is to start with the why. Anytime you're doing something unpopular or even popular, if you start with the why, people are going to be more bought in because you're taking them on the journey with you. It's me describing what is causing this to happen versus just shoving a change down your throat. So then the next thing is to define the new policy clearly. And with something this important, I'm going to send it out in writing afterwards. And then here's the important part is stopping to ask for questions, but not just questions. I need your knee-jerk reactions, your emotions that you're feeling, because I want to give folks the chance to validate their feelings while I give the positives, right? I can't be fake with this. I have to have true positives from this situation. And sometimes it takes some creative thinking to get there. But we want to make sure that we are leaving our teams with feeling as good as they possibly can in the face of something that they may find to be unpopular. So let's do one together. You've got this great news on the surface. Someone got a promotion. So y'all come off mute. What areas of impact do we want to make sure that we cover when we go over this?
Envy. People can be envious. Envy.
Yes.
Jealousy.
Yes. 100%. There are going to be some people that are unhappy with this news because some people definitely believe the idea of someone else is winning, then I am losing, right? So we're going to have some envy and some jealousy. What is the other one that we want to bring out here?
concerns. People may think they're going to get the work of the person who was getting promoted. Who's going to do the work?
Great call out. Love that.
In the chat, we have Magda throughout suspicion, Entity 2 throughout growth.
Growth, suspicion, love all of those. I'm going to take a really obvious one. We want to celebrate, right? We want to make sure the person that got promoted is getting their flowers, but at the same time, we want to hit these other areas. So who would like to tell me what the first bullet point you would write about this message that you're wanting to convey to your team? What would that first bullet point look like?
The reasons why this person is like capable of this new position.
Absolutely. We want to lead early with the why this happened. I would take a moment at the very beginning to do nothing but celebrate. Join me in a round of applause for Ray Carcana, who we just promoted, right? And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk about the why that this happened. And then what are we going to do next? Because remember, Ray is in this meeting with us. So what are we going to do next? So we still have some areas of impact. Let's just go with envy that we're going to pull in here. What do we think?
Gossiping.
Ask people how they're feeling about the news.
Maybe you got to be careful, because if somebody's like, well, I think Ray sucks, so why did he get this promotion? That's going to be a rotten meeting.
I wonder if you talk about the why this person was promoted and you explain the reason.
Absolutely. Why this happened. We're going to make it crystal clear. And then I'm going to wrap up with something like, hey, if this was making you feel feelings, you know my door is always open at any time. Let's talk about it later. And then I may even follow up in one-on-ones for people that may have been on the cusp of that same promotion, right? I'm going to make sure that they understand I haven't forgotten about you, that there's a plan for you, and reminding this is what your plan that you're on looks like to help you get to that next area. So thank you so much. Those were all great ideas and suggestions. So let's go back to the theater of the mind. You're walking closer and closer to the tavern, and suddenly you hear that the laughter has absolutely stopped. It's gotten very quiet. Now, you have gone to this tavern a million times in the past. It's your favorite. It's only a few meters away from your house even. You guys are pretty close together. So you stride straight into that bar, and immediately you notice that the bartender, your friend Gimlin, is being held at knife point. And I'm going to tell you, your blood boils. I've already told you this is your favorite tavern, so you have a relationship with Gimlin. But not just that. You guys have known each other since you were 13, and you were both making money by picking apples at Farmer Reichard's orchard. And you have been deep friends. So you immediately pull the weapon out on your back, and you're going to try to knock that knife away. So let's roll your D20 and see if you did it or not. So everybody give us a roll. Now, here's the bad news. If you had a tree branch as your weapon earlier, you got to subtract 1 from your roll. So sorry, it is very hard to fight with trees. I don't make the rules, it just is. So now that you've got your roll, so if you rolled a 1 through 10, absolute disaster. You go to pull out your weapon, but you trip as it's going, and you completely ruin your shot, completely and absolutely ruin what you were trying to do. But if you rolled an 11 through 20, gang, have you been practicing this exact move for your entire life? Because it was beautiful. You have a little flick of your wrist, and the knife goes sailing through the air and lands harmlessly on the bar. In this example, you knew exactly what you were doing, right? Get the knife, save the friend. There was no complexity here whatsoever. But have you ever been in a campaign, if you've played before, where the storyline got so twisted that the players didn't even know what to tackle next? I have seen this in action from some of even the best dungeon masters. For those of you that joined this talk because you do like Dungeons and Dragons, I'm sure you've heard of Critical Role. Critical Role is one of the best known podcasts for people that like to enjoy watching others play D&D. And its DM, Matt Mercer, is known to be one of the best of all times. He's so good. I will forever remember a quote, though, from one of his players in a very tricky area of the game. He said, "I'm sorry, what are we doing down here again?" And that just killed me, because I'm like, oh, it happens to us all. We think that we're being very clear. We think our expectations are being shown, but actually we buried the lead a long time ago. So the same thing can happen in leadership. Does your team truly know how to succeed? So we talked about, we need to be very clear with our words, but that's just, being clear is just half the battle, because what you need to have comes from this quote from Sam Walton that really embodies what I mean here. High expectations are the key to everything. I love this quote, because when I sit down and think about the team that I have the privilege to lead, I have to think big, because my team rises to the occasion over and over again. I lead a team of truly remarkable people, but I bet I'm not the only one that does. I bet a lot of the leaders in this call also have teams that they are just incredibly excited to lead. So if I have expectations that are too simple, I will never see the true potential of my team. They're gonna go above, but they're never going to really stretch to get to that level of potential that I know that they can meet. So how do I create expectations that allow them to hit their potential? I'm going to let you in on one of my DM secrets. And this is scary, because I think that one of my players might even be in here, and he might get mad at me when he hears about this secret. But when I create a puzzle, sometimes there's things that you want your characters to have to figure it out. Maybe it's standing on this pressure plate. Maybe it's pushing this sort of hidden button. Maybe it's coming up with this chant that they had to put together in order to get the door to open, kind of like Lord of the Rings when they're stuck down at the door and they can't figure out that you need to say the password, right? So that's something that we do a lot in D&D. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out the mechanisms for that puzzle crystal clear, using that technique that we talked about being very open. What are the desired areas of impact that we're looking for? And I can make this complicated. I can make it complex. And that is all fine, as long as I'm clear about what we need to do. But what I don't do, and here's the shady part of this, I don't come up with the solution. I never figure out, and this is how it's solved. You know why? It's because my players are inevitably going to come up with something that is so much cooler than anything I would have ever created myself, because they understood those first guidelines of how they needed to come to the table, right? They heard those complex guardrails that I set, and then they use their imaginations and come so much higher than what I could have ever hoped for. So what I do instead is just build what they need to be successful and leave the rest to them. So let me give you an example. In the role that I'm currently in, when I first came in, one of my responsibilities is to help our team become more data-driven. And we needed this for a couple of reasons. We needed to be more transparent about several things. We needed to be more transparent about what do Scrum Masters do. And we needed to be more transparent about how our teams are actually performing. So we needed something that would allow us to really get out there and sparkle. So we started this idea of data check-ins. And at the beginning, I had a template that you were like, hey, fill out this template, X, Y, Z. But then we redid the template, and now it just has a few set metrics. And I allow my team to come up with all of the rest that allows them to communicate in a way that best works for them. So they get to choose, what visuals do I want to have? Some people choose to have cute little images that really visualize what they're going through. Some of them have charts upon charts upon charts, because that's the way their brain thinks about things, but the results that I've gotten is where this is really spectacular. I want to pull out one idea. So in my mind, when I'm thinking things that we need to always track, I'm thinking cycle time. I'm thinking code shelf time. I'm thinking the very obvious areas like this. I have one guy come and say, hey, I've actually been tracking the amount of hours that we lose every time my devs need to do an update on their laptops, because their hard drives are so small that every time we have to do an update, they are going to have to uninstall everything on their hard drive, do the update, and then reinstall everything, which takes forever. Because of this person's study, we got new laptops. So the things that these folks can come up with are so much bigger and greater than anything I could have ever thought of. We've had people that are tracking things like, how many hours have we wasted because of interruptions? I wouldn't have asked for that, but it was amazing. So you're going to see this time and time again. You've put the guidelines in place and then turning it over to your team. So I'd like to ask you, how can you use this method? Let's open up the floor for some discussion.
I'm a team lead for a test and QA team, and there's a lot of going back and forth with test results if the developers have been sloppy or racing towards solutions. And it could definitely be a nice metric to see how much time is lost to test stuff that could have easily been prevented by the developer itself if they looked at their own work.
Yeah. Great example of a metric that would be exciting to track. But do you know how, let's open up the floor for examples of setting the mechanism of the expectation that we have, but not setting the solution. Does anybody have any ideas around that?
I think one could possibly be like in a retrospective, for instance, just asking maybe the developers, maybe set the frame. Okay, this is where we did, these are the results, these are the metrics. What do you guys want to measure and improve on? Don't be prescriptive about it, but just open it up and let them decide, and then them put in the tools to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. Getting out of our developers' way. We've set up, okay, this was clearly an issue, guys. We had 72% defect rate this last sprint. We should probably talk about what's going on. But we're not going to tell them how they need to improve. Absolutely, because our ideas may not be nearly as good as what they would come up with themselves. Love that. Thank you so much, Brett. All right. I hope this method is something that's helpful for you, but it's been something that really helped me have my people come up with their own potential instead of me setting the bar for them. All right, let's go back to our mind. So regardless of whether you disarm the assailant or not, please go ahead and roll your die. This one's a pretty simple to beat roll. If you rolled above a 2, you notice that at least 5 members of the crowd are subtly grabbing weapons from under their cloak. Boy, you really stepped in it this time, didn't you? You just rushed in and didn't even pause and look around. Hey, if you rolled a 1 or 2 though, for you, you are the hero of this day. Everything is going your way. And yeah, you know that you saved it. So congratulations to you. Even if you didn't disarm the assailant, everyone is now looking at you and not Gimlin anymore. However, Gimlin jumps spryly on the bar and bellows, "Free drinks on the house, bottoms up." And then tensions do seem to die down as everyone holds up their mug for a refill of ale. Now, in our game just now, I did something that a good leader should never do. Any ideas of what I just did that is a terrible idea for leaders?
Change the meaning of the dice, the values, low values being high gain.
That's true. Sometimes our bar is pretty low. I would agree. What I did here that is really questionable, though, is I swooped in and I saved the day, right? I want to share with you a quote from Tina Fey, love her, that really speaks to this. In most cases, being a good boss means hiring talented people and getting out of their way. So as a leader, I do not need to just give away the answer. But what I don't want to overlook is the part that it says in most cases. In our theater of the mind moment, you were about to be slaughtered. Like it was going to go south real fast there. The character didn't scope out the room. He just ran in, saw the danger, solved the problem. Sure, I mean, I didn't let you do anything else other than that this time. You may have been more cautious if it was up to you as to what you were going to do. But in real D&D, you're going to see that all the time, right? Especially with new players. They're just so excited to get to use that cool shiny weapon that they had on their back. They're going to jump in and just go ham on that. So let's think about the in most cases and get some advice from a book that truly changed the way that I lead. I don't make a lot of book recommendations, but this one I have recommended to every single person that works for me. I have recommended to all of the leaders that I've taught about leadership. It's called The Coaching Habit. Say less, ask more, and change the way you lead forever. What a title. And let me tell you, it did what it said. It did change the way that I lead forever. So Michael Bonier-Stanier has brilliantly distilled coaching down to 7 questions that help you get to the heart of the matter and provide the support that your team desperately needs. So I want to show you a mantra that comes up through this book, and we're going to talk about it multiple times. It's called Be Lazy, Be Curious, Be Often. Be lazy, be curious, be often. So those last 2 for leaders, they come pretty naturally to most people. Being curious, asking a lot about what's going on, following up on stuff that you learned about before, being curious about what happened from the thing that you talked about last week, right? Being often, you're checking in regularly. You're not going to leave your people to worry for weeks on end. You're checking in at least every week or 2, right? Making sure that people are doing okay. But be lazy? Am I, and by proxy, Michael, truly proposing for you to be lazy? Yes. Yes, I am. And it's in a very specific way that I need you to be lazy. So here's the quote. So many of us have a pattern of behavior that we will leap in and we start helping people without really knowing what they want or if our solution is actually the thing that they're looking for. How many times have you done this? Someone comes to you for help and oh boy, do you know the answer to that question? Or maybe you just handle it yourself. You take care of it. I'm going to share a story with you about the time I was early into leadership and I just absolutely did this the wrongest way possible. So I had a team of 5. They were early in their careers, fresh out of college. And I had just gotten that new shiny manager title. I was so proud of it. Maybe a little power hungry, maybe looking back, I could see that now. But one of my young ladies that worked for me came to me and told me she was mad. She was mad. She said, Amber, this director said some very condescending remarks to me. It might not have been sexual harassment, but boy, it was close. And I saw red and I knew I am the manager. I've got the power, right? So I left that one-on-one and I strode down to this director's office and I gave it to him. I bet he still thinks about this to this day because I definitely just let him know of how we treat young women in the workforce. And it was not the way that he did. Definitely. I felt so good about myself. I was like, problem solved. So I went back and told my gal what I did. And then I was ready for the accolades. Wow, what a great leader you are. But instead she started crying. And I'm like, oh no, what? And she said, Amber, now it looks like I can't fight my own battles. I did not need you to do this. I was just sharing with you something that had happened. And man, has that not stuck with me all these years. That happened close to 20 years ago. And I'm still thinking about this now. So what do we do instead? Instead, ask the following: how can I help? What can I do for you? Lean in and ask where you're actually needed. And when I first implemented this technique, I thought I am going to be just completely overwhelmed with the amount of work that comes this way. A leader saying, what can I do for you? How can I help you? I thought it was just going to be task. But I was like, I'm going to commit. I'm going to do it. But you know what? I ask this question at least 27 times every week. And the amount of times that I am actually asked to do something is next to none. Instead, what we do is we talk about a plan, about what that person can do for themselves if they need help. My job satisfaction has gone way up because I'm not filling my schedule up with these little tasks that no one was asking me to do, but I was just taking on myself anyway. My team's satisfaction has gone up as well because they know that I trust them to make good choices. I don't swoop in and save them anymore, but I am there if they need me. So I ask, how can I help? What can I do to make your job easier? How can I lean in? So this method has changed the way that I spend my time at work, and it has been just the best change that I ever could have asked for. All right, let's get back into the theater of our mind. So after Gimlin lived up on the bar, you come to a realization that you should probably pay a bit more attention to what is going on around you. So let's roll an insight check about the assailant. So everybody roll your dice and let's just see what this assailant was really thinking. Let's see if we can get anything. Sorry, you rolled a 1 through 10. Wow, this guy seems nice. It's weird that he had a knife out just before, huh? That just does not fit with his demeanor at all. Sorry, you are terrible at reading a room. If you rolled a 1 through 10, you're just happy to be there. But if you rolled an 11 through 20, you notice that he is shaking. When you peer into his eyes, you can tell that he is absolutely petrified. Now, regardless of which way you rolled, you didn't get the outcome that you expected. We're maybe expecting a vicious killer, and now we see that we have something entirely different happening. And that's why it is so important as a leader to do something that I like to call inspect what you expect. We've talked about the importance of being lazy to help our team create their own plans to keep you from doing work that the team would prefer to handle themselves. But that does not mean that you just throw people into the wild and say, see you next week, right? We need things to help us gauge how our teams are performing. And the best way to do that is the use of metrics. Ooh, as soon as I said metrics, how many of you clinched up? Like, I know we have all worked at places where metrics have been used as a weapon to beat us over the head, but that doesn't mean that metrics are a dirty word. We just have to be more cautious about how we're going to use them. So here's some tricks to using metrics in a way that's much more safe. So number one, the metrics that you select have a massive impact on behavior. Only select metrics that have direct action items. If you can't act on a metric that you've selected in a valuable way, you're setting yourself up for metrics being gamed. The one I want to call out here is velocity. If I'm tracking how much velocity you're doing and I'm asking it to increase, what am I really asking for? You to develop harder? You to what? Like suddenly come up with more hours in your day? We're going to end up just having this entirely gamed. And the way that looks like is maybe you have people breaking things down into individual stories that really should just be a task. And they're like, whoop, that was a 3-pointer that I finished today. And man, I can do that every day. Amazing. Or maybe we see it of adding additional buffer into stories that what was really a 5-pointer now turned into a 13. right? We're just asking for metrics to be gamed. So think very carefully, what are my action items from this particular area, right? So next, what does your team think about the metrics that you've chosen to track? You need to be open to changing your mind or having a truly damn good reason for why you selected it. For example, I track forecasted versus completed. Some of my team was really hesitant here, and I'm going to be honest with you, hesitant is a nice word for what the team felt like when I first started tracking this. In healthcare, though, which is where I work, you have to be reliable. We can't just go to a hospital and be like, sorry, my dude, I can't do the thing that you needed that I promised you I'd have done at this time. We can't do that. We have to be reliable. So there's no way around it. There was incredibly important to me that the majority of the time we do the majority of what we say we're going to do. And I'm okay with this because my Scrum Masters are the ones that are going to be guiding the forecast. I'm not shoving a quota down their throats. But what I do need to make sure is that they understood the following. Perfection is not what we're looking for here. If you guys are delivering 100% sprint after sprint after sprint, I'm going to be very suspicious because that's not how sprints work, right? There are sprints that just absolutely blow up. And I don't take it on a sprint by sprint basis. I look at a trend across an entire quarter. All right. Third, I encourage you to compare the person to them only to themselves, not to others. You've probably heard don't compare team to team. Don't compare person to person either, because on paper, this one guy can look like he's doing so much better than this guy. Maybe this guy has his team has a cycle time of 3 days. Wow, this guy has a cycle time of 11. Not as good, right? Is it really? It's hard to say. What I need to look at is what was happening last year. It turns out that guy over here that's got a cycle time of 11 days went from 20 days down to 11. He's killing it, doing amazing. And my first guy actually used to be 2 days and now he's up to 3. So maybe moving in the wrong direction. But there are times that we have to think about how do we compare. So it's based truly on how did this person do a year before, 6 months ago, versus just comparing one person to the next. I am running short on time, so I'm going to speed up just a little bit. We're gonna play our game one last time. It turns out that you fit amazingly well with some of the people that Gimlin has been introducing you to, and you have found the root cause of why the bar was so twitchy. But I want you to imagine that some time has passed. You find yourself in all kinds of political schemes, complex economic pyramids. After this play continues for a while, your team asks you to help with a plan to creep into the mayor's house. Your plan is a good one. You're going to wait until everyone falls asleep, and then you're going to sneak through an unlocked cellar. Let's roll your D20 to find out how it goes. Everybody roll for me, please. Okay. If you rolled a 1 through 19, holy heck, there is a massive dog down here and it is barking its face off. If you rolled a 20, there is a dog, but you managed to soothe him with some jerky that you happen to have before he gets really going and waking up the house. For those of you that did not succeed this roll, which I imagine is the majority of us, you're going to have the following conversation with a group in jail. If you did succeed, hey, you're chatting over the mission at the inn that you're staying at that night. But someone says, hey, any ideas of how we could have missed that dog that lives in the mayor's house? I had no idea one was even there. You know how. You rushed through the recon mission. This was definitely your fault. You take a deep breath and you choose to tell the truth. Okay, let's be real. If you were playing real D&D and that happened, you were going to be the butt of many, many jokes for a long time left in the future. But let's consider this from a perspective of leadership, because this is an excellent time to empower and support your team. In order for D&D to feel like it's fun, your decisions have to matter, but mistakes have to have the ability to be corrected. And isn't that true of work? We want our teams to take ownership of their work and to learn from their mistakes and to grow. So how do we start forming this type of ownership? One, we need to completely know our responsibilities. We need to create an environment of belonging. We want to foster this feeling by actively finding ways to have your team grow together. I delegate responsibilities that cause people to work with others. Oftentimes, if I'm going to delegate, it's going to be something that has an impact on others in the team. Creating mentorship programs for your new hires, encouraging your team to bring their true selves to work. Like, you don't have to pretend that you're having the world's best day. You just have to complete the work that you needed to do for the day, right? We don't have to plaster on fake smiles. The next 2 points of no blame and rewarding honesty are being made from a top down kind of decision of how you decide your culture should be. And I want to show you one of my favorite for knowledge workers, which is Western's organizational culture. This is one of my favorites because it takes you on a journey. You come and you may see yourself in this first column, a company that is incredibly power oriented. So you notice things like people siloing themselves away, not cooperating together. And when things go wrong, the bearer of bad news is decimated, and heaven forbid you are the person that made the mistake. However, Western shows you the behaviors to strive towards a generative performance-oriented culture, teams that are working together well and with others. And if things go wrong, we set out on an adventure to find out what happened and to train those that bring the bad news. This culture encourages not blaming individuals, but looking for ways to prevent the error from occurring again. And because messengers are trained, we reward honesty, openness, instead of rewarding ethical fading. So this is our responsible as leaders. We can't force someone to be honest, but we are giving them an environment where it is safe and encouraged to be. So really quickly, let's talk about what our team members' responsibilities are. 2 that I'd like to cover is raising concerns and having accountability. Culture not only flows down from leadership, it's driven by the team. Our team members have the responsibility to put their hand up when concerns arise. This ties in beautifully to rewarding honesty. Oddly enough, nothing makes me happier than when someone on my team starts their one-on-one by saying, "Hey, I think I messed up." Even though we'll have to work through something, I know my team trusts me with their honesty and we can get through anything together. But it goes deeper than just honesty. When things go sideways, our folks need to be able to take responsibility for their actions without blaming others. This opens the door to learning and development, which deepens relationships with others. When we take accountability, we develop resilience and the ability to bounce back from setbacks. By accepting responsibility and focusing on solutions, we move forward with a positive attitude and a determination to achieve our goals. And honestly, friends, that is all that I have time to discuss with you today. I can talk about leadership for hours and hours, but I'd like to thank you for your time and open up the floor for a couple of minutes for any questions. Does anybody have something that they'd like to ask? Ray, do you see anything that I need to be aware of?
I don't. People have been going pretty well. So unrelated, I do want to just thank the attendees, especially all the ones that we used to work with that have come out to support our speaker. It was a very great interactive session. I was checking work chat and lots of positive feedback about the interactivity on it.
Well, thank you so much. I would love for everybody in this call to reach out to me. Oh, yes.
There is one hand up. Anuradha.
Oh, was there?
Right, Anuradha. Yeah. Yes, I know. It's a mouthful.
Oh, there goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I second everything Ray said. Brilliant session. Thank you so much, Amber. This is the first time I'm attending a session like this, and the first time I got to learn about Dungeons and Dragons, which I had no clue of. And it was so nice to see how you are driving it and how you made me involved. Even when I had to go take a restroom break, I was just running back to my phone to come and roll the dice. So pretty interesting. Thank you so much. So the only question from me is, how long did it take for you to put a presentation like this on a totally different note, right? I mean, you came up with such brilliant, you shared so much of your experience, your wisdom. I just wanted to know that. How long did it take for you?
That's a hysterical question because my team knows I've had a block and I had the worst time building these slides. So it ended up taking me about a week, but most of that week time was spent last night as I finished pulling things together.
I would have not slept, to be honest, right? I mean, when you have a presentation the next day, so I totally understand what you have to say, but thank you so much. Great session. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.